Introduce our guests here. I have Yariv Oppenheimer, the former director of Peace Now and an activist. Thank you so much for being with us. Also joining me outside is Eli Peepers. He is within the settlement of Alfei Manash. A gorgeous view behind him. He's the director of international affairs with the Yesha Council. So let's start with you. What is your reaction to tonight's ceremony? Is it called for? Is it appropriate to celebrate the 50 years of the settlements?
Of course, it's absolutely appropriate to celebrate the liberation of Judea and Samaria. Particularly, this event is taking place in Gush Etzion, a place where Israelis were living very proudly. Prior to 1948, were destroyed. All the Jewish communities were destroyed there pre-1948, in fact, on the eve of Israel declaring independence. So now that it was liberated in 1967 and we have come back and we have reestablished Jewish presence in Judea and Samaria, it is an absolute reason to celebrate. And it is wonderful that for the first time, the State of Israel is having a formal event, a formal ceremony, recognizing that, embracing that, and demonstrating how mainstream Judea and Samaria is in the body politic in Israel.
All right, stay with us, sir. I'm going to also introduce into our conversation Yariv. Yariv, you had that graphic, that bullet point pointing out, this Gush Etzion perhaps is the most famous, certainly one of the most thriving settlements. But as you see there are more than 130 other settlements, nearly 100 unauthorized, unrecognized outposts. And we have more than 420,000 Israelis living in these settlements. When you hear those words, from Alfei Manasseh and other settlements, that the West Bank has been liberated, that Israeli life needs to be in the West Bank, it's prospering. What should happen to those 400,000? In your view, we have almost 500,000 people living there.
Most of these people that are living in the West Bank will not come today to this event because they are not sharing the same values. Most of them are living in the settlements blocks. They are there because of quality of life, Orthodox, ultra-religious people looking for housing solution. So the motivation is not the same like the Yesha Council or the Gush Emunim, the right-wing, the ideological religious movement that represent only a third of this population. So and this event today, even if it's formal, because the government made it formal, it still doesn't represent most of the Israeli public, that doesn't support the expansion and the building of isolated small settlements all around. And this is the most debatable issue in the Israeli society. You cannot just declare this is a consensus because the government made the decision that this is for everyone, and now everyone have to clap and come and to attend. This is a very disputable issue. And most of the Israelis are not sharing the same values of building new settlements in the heart of the West Bank. And, even the government never annexed the West Bank. And there is a reason for that, because even the right-wing government understand that there is a problem there. There are some Palestinians living in the West Bank as well.
Let me go back to Eli, who was an Alfei Manasseh first. Let me get your reaction to, if you were able to listen to our conversation in the studio, to some of those remarks. And just you said the liberation of the West Bank, the call to annex a lot of these communities. Obviously, a lot of the Western world, the United States, the UN, they don't see it as a liberation. They see it as an occupation and a major obstacle to the two-state solution. So with this event tonight, what is your response?
Well, I actually would disagree with that. I think it's actually been quite clear. The United States, for example, has made it very clear they've never used the term occupation. They use other terms, and that's for political reasons. But the suggestion, and actually I want to go back and I want to agree with one of the points that Yariv made, there's about 1/3 of the Israeli residents are very strong and in the typical way that you identify settlers. But the other 2/3, that just merely highlights the fact that it's become mainstream. People come and live in Judea and Samaria. They don't necessarily need to come and celebrate and to commemorate and worry about the political aspects of Judea and Samaria. For them, it's normal life. It's been 50 years. We fought this. We've won this political debate. It's over. There's now closing in on 500,000 Israelis who are living there. It's time to put that behind us. And I think one of the demonstrations is that despite the fact that there has been a lot of effort by people on the left who are trying to make this much more controversial, both two major political parties in the opposition, Yesh Atid and the Zionist Union have made it very clear that they are absolutely not boycotting this event in any stretch. Yesh Atid is actually sending a member of the Knesset over to the event. Zionist Union, the head of the Zionist Union put out a very strong Facebook message making clear that he was not opposed to the event. He was going to be in Beersheba or somewhere else. But even more than that, and it's not just about this one event, the head of the Zionist Union spoke in Efrat just a few weeks ago on Tisha B'Av, when the Zionist Union was having their internal political campaign to see who was going to be leading the party. They spent a day in Gush Etzion to suggest that they are not at all embracing aspects of Judea and Samaria. Certainly there are areas of disagreement, but to say that this is not a consensus in Israel is missing the point.
Let me let you answer to this point.
There are Israelis living in the West Bank, and even when I'm getting an invitation, I will come in to meet with them and I will speak with them. I don't see them as my enemy. They are my political opponents, but they are not my enemy. So talking with them and even meeting with them in the settlements doesn't mean that you support the settlements idea.
But they're becoming mainstream. It's half a million.
They're there, but mostly they are in the settlements blocks, places that will remain in Israel's side when there will be an agreement. But this, the leadership of the Yesha Council, the people that are organizing this event, they have a bigger goal. They are trying to make facts on the ground, not in the settlements blocks, but all around the West Bank, in order to make it impossible to disconnect from the Palestinians. And we are talking a lot about the settlements, but the settlers. The settlers are the minority of the population in the West Bank. Most of the people living in the West Bank, 90% of the people, are Palestinians. They have no rights. They are not voting, and they are not invited to this evening event because they are the majority, but they are living under occupation.
About 12% of the West Bank population now, a little more than that, comprising of Israeli settlers. We have to leave this conversation here. I want to thank our guests, Eli, as well as Yariv, who will be in attendance, I-24 News, at the event tonight. A very important and controversial government ceremony, and we'll be there. And still ahead,